So it is essential to learn and grow, to be able to get feedback from other people. We, by definition, cannot see our own blind spots. Just like if you are driving in a car, you cannot see anything that's in your blind spot. And so today we want to share with you some tools and best practices on how you can let others know how you like to receive feedback, especially if the thought of that makes you a little nervous, because certainly putting yourself out there and inviting people to give you feedback can be a little bit scary. So the more awareness you have on what your preferences are, the better. But even better if you can share with your colleagues, your manager, your teammates, how you like to receive feedback so you can most effectively learn and grow from it. So Jill is going to kick us off with our workout today.
Yeah. So when we think about receiving feedback, there's lots of benefits to receiving feedback, even though one of the common things that we hear from clients is people don't like to get feedback. Giving feedback is difficult. And part of that is true, but let's be honest, do we really want to live in a world or live in an organization where we would never receive feedback? Feedback is essential in order to make corrections. If mistakes are being made, it's good to know about those mistakes so we can nip that in the bud if we need to, or get back on the right track. Feedback is that chance for collaboration, for problem solving. As Darcy said, highlighting those blind spots and even just getting things on the table. Hey, I notice when you are in a meeting, sometimes your face doesn't seem to match what you're saying. And can we have a conversation about that, right? Like that can be scary to discuss. And so even though there's plenty of trainings out there that talk about how to give feedback, it's just as important to understand how to receive feedback in an effective way. And we're looking at this through the practice of agility. The Thoughtfully Fit practice of agility is all about how do you respond effectively instead of reacting impulsively. Darcy, you and I have worked together for a long time. I have never reacted impulsively when you've given me feedback, right?
Well, I mean, I think you and I have worked hard to design our alliance to get to know each other and to build trust on how do we like to receive feedback. And so I think we do it well. But of course, there's been times where I've said something in a horrible way at the wrong time that has not landed well with you.
Yeah. And I'm going to give Darcy a little bit more credit. Sometimes she's just said something completely fair and appropriate, and it has not landed well with me because I'm human, right? We're all in those situations. I've done the same thing with Darcy where I've given her feedback and it doesn't quite land the way that we were intending it to. And so while there is plenty to look at from that place of how you're giving that feedback, there's just as much to be aware of when you are receiving that feedback. And so one of the things that we explore with teams is, what are your preferences? What are your preferences when it comes to receiving feedback, and how can you not keep that a secret? So, for example, one of the things that we talk about in trainings a lot is, do you like Oreos? Darcy, do you like Oreos?
I love them. Oreos are giving the feedback sandwiched in positives. So you've got something nice, and then you give some constructive feedback, information, and then you end with something nice. Some people really like that. Others in the trainings we talk about are like, oh my God, just get cut to the chase. Just lead with the punchline. Tell me, don't make me wait and wonder, is the positive thing you're saying sincere or real, or is it just a way from I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop?
And if we were looking at this from the perspective of how best to give feedback, some people might say, I don't like giving out the Oreos because the message gets lost. Some people really prefer to give out the Oreos. At the end of the day, though, the most important thing is, how is that feedback being received? So if you have somebody on your team who says, I like the compliment sandwich, I like the Oreo, are you really going to tell them, well, sometimes the message gets lost in those Oreos, so I'm not going to give them to you? No, right? If they're letting you know, I'd like just to get a little bit of kindness or a little bit of compliments before I get that hard feedback. It's a way for you to connect with them and really actually make sure that that feedback lands. Another topic that we often bring up in our trainings and in workouts like this is how much heads up do you want that this feedback is coming? And so for some people, if you have feedback and they want it in the moment, if something's happening, just tell me in the moment while this is happening here so we can have a conversation about it. For other people, they like getting that heads up. They like knowing, oh, somebody's not happy. Let me try to wrap my brain around this a little bit. Again, we can discuss the merits and the philosophy of which one is better. Is it better to have that conversation in person? Is it better to have that conversation in email? But if you know about yourself, I like that moment to process and to think about it. And then letting people know, hey, I want to have a good conversation. But if you send me that email first, it's going to be a better conversation.
In the training we just did, I asked a poll of the participants what they prefer, and it was pretty much split down the middle. Half the people said, I want it in writing. I want to be able to read it, to process it, to think about it before having any kind of conversation. And then half the people said, oh gosh, no, I want you to come and talk to me face to face, or pick up the phone and verbally tell me. I do not want it in writing where I'm like making up all of the emotion and reading into it in a way that I don't fall prey to when I'm actually feeling and hearing the other person's emotions and energy.
And what we see with the highest performing teams is that managers and employees are not trying to convince each other of which way of feedback is best. Because that conversation, there can be no winners, right? People are going to have different preferences. But what we see with the highest performing teams is they talk about those preferences, and to the best that they can, they respect those preferences. And so one more question that I want you to ponder and think about here today is, what type of feedback motivates you? We just had in a recent Thoughtfully Fit Gym workout, we posed this question. And you can see there's a lot of variety here, that of wanting that timely and specific, getting really clear. The comment in the bottom left, Darcy, I love. The damage you have done is not permanent. Okay, yes, that's, putting it in context a little bit of recognizing, if all feedback is negative and horrible, it loses that luster after a little bit. So being really clear. Now, these are just 7 people's interpretations. Think about what type of feedback motivates you. And how can you let people know that? Spoiler alert, it's as simple as letting them know, hey, I like to receive feedback that's really clear and specific. So anytime you can give me examples, I'd appreciate that. And if you don't want to tell your boss to do more work, sometimes that can feel uncomfortable. If they give you feedback, say, hey, thank you for this feedback. I want to brainstorm some next steps and some concrete things that I can do different moving forward. Can we talk about this again and make sure that that the feedback that you're trying to give me, I'm hearing correctly? You want to knock your boss's socks off? Say something like that. Say, I want to continue this conversation, and see what they have to say.
And this is what we do when we're working with individuals and teams. We help create that self-awareness and that systems awareness by giving you some tools and some frameworks to be able to not only increase your self-awareness and systems awareness, but then with that new awareness, what do you do with it? How do you communicate it with your colleagues, with your manager? How do you better receive feedback? And then also, how do you better give feedback? So if you are intrigued and you're curious and you want to connect with us, to do a training, a workshop, a 4-month series, Thoughtfully Fit team coaching. All of our services and products are designed to help create thoughtfully fit teams and a winning culture. We would love to connect with you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you next time.